Funding for this program is provided by PLY, generous contributions from people like you.
Hello there again. This is Jean-Pierre Adifenio, philosopher of ethics, etc. Welcome to another, the second episode of Ethics, etc. And today, because last time I opened up with some of my general views on major ethical issues, today I'm going to talk about two things in particular. One will be about free will and how that relates to decisions people make in their conduct, in their thinking, and what is evil in terms of a person's decisions. Is there such a thing as an intentional ill will in a person? Or what is the reason why people commit horrible things against other people? So I'll be talking about that now. And also today I would like to talk about something very important, which I mentioned last time, and that is the meaning of words, and how somehow over the past few decades, especially more recently, people are, if I may say so, abusing words. They don't know the meaning of very important words. Words like democracy, fascism. They don't understand some basic things that, well, when I was a young man in the 1980s, living in New York City on my own, when I left New York City and went to Baltimore, I knew the meaning of basic words. And, TV in America was full of meaningful programs, TV programs that taught people indirectly ethics and democracy and freedom and liberty, values, real important values and principles that are not based upon religion, dogma, narrow ways of thinking, but rather universal concepts as such. The second part of today's show, in terms of ethics, etc., will be about the danger that this poses, this lack of proper definitions. But let's get right into the issue of free will and whether a person actually intends to be evil. So, if you think about it, when a person's about to commit an act of violence against another person or a group of people, when they, whether they're in a sudden crisis situation or they have a general worldview, mindset, agenda based on having been brainwashed by their parents and community, friends, society, their ethnic group, their religion, whatever thing that might have influenced their conceptions and preconceptions about the world in general, and whatever motivates them to act in a certain way in certain situations. Does that person really know what they are doing is unethical and evil, harmful? I argue that evil is the lack of intentionality. That in order to be truly evil in terms of your soul, which I don't believe is possible, but in terms of your real self-persona, to be evil, you would have to know at the time you're doing what you're doing that what you're doing is absolutely illogical, wrong, harmful, not just to the people that you're targeting, the group, the different people, the others, them, not us, but it's also harmful to yourself and to your community, because we live on a planet where borders are irrelevant. When you have viruses like now, this COVID-19, causing tremendous damage to the world and its economy, and it doesn't recognize borders. This is not a Chinese virus, and so we have a world where all these artificial divisions created by extremism are harmful to all of us. And I would argue that a person who in any situation chooses supposedly to do an evil act as opposed to a good act, or a neutral act is doing so because of a lack of free will, a lack of awareness. And then people can say, well, then where does that come from? Where does that inability to see the options, to see the difference? Well, it's very simple. I've explained this somewhat in the previous show. If you have a painter's palette with all the colors and you want to paint a picture that's accurately representing what you see, as a classical oil painter would, you'd have to have all those basic colors and all the basics, yeah? So white and black, as well as all the basic colors, and as I said, some metallics as well. And then you can paint a picture of what you see. And the same is with decisions. If you're going to make a decision, you need to know what the options are before you can really make the correct decision. And if the way you think about the world is narrow-minded, short-term, and shallow thinking, narrow-minded, short-term, and shallow thinking, the dimensions of ignorance. If your mind is an ignorant mind, and you're convinced of certain ridiculous theories about race, genetics, religion, whatever, if you're convinced about certain things that are not based on your own personal effort to truly think about the world and the universe, to recognize the infinity and mystery of it all, as Einstein would say, if you're not wrapped in awe at the mystery of the universe, then you're as good as dead, in certain ways. Of course, he meant that intellectually. So, ill will, free will, intentional ill will, I don't buy that people do things to harm others because they really mean it. They do that, they think they mean it, but they think they mean it because they're doing good for their own people, for themselves. But they're not. Because really these divisions on our planet are artificial and dangerous. And so now you have certain key political figures, and they are promoting the agenda of shutting down this international exchange, this mixing, this in what people call globalization. But of course, globalization has a negative potential and a positive potential. It's inevitable. Globalization is inevitable, but it can be positive or it can be negative. Negative would mean that it's just benefiting a very small percentage of people on Earth, the elite few, some of them with lots of money, exploiting the masses. I'm a social democrat, so I don't accept that. We need to have a world where the middle class is not only restored again, but it's promoted and increased. The percentage of middle class people in every country in the world should go way up. Of course, the people with lots of money and power, they don't like that idea, because when you have a country with a big middle class, then you have less crime, corruption, and you have better laws, supposedly. Now, there are problems in assuming that just the middle class by themselves can do the right things. They need those special thinkers, those philosophers and artists, free thinkers like myself, in order to better understand themselves and the world. We need more liberal arts, not less liberal arts. All this hard science and all this technological interest without also having behind it ethics and philosophy, wisdom, enlightenment, empathy and compassion, humanness, the being that is human and decides to do good. So I argue that if you're doing something evil, it's not because you really mean it, though you think so. And people say, but what about somebody like Hitler or Mussolini or Tojo or Franco or Pol Pot or Idi Amin? What about those people? The ones that are doing so much harm. Don't they mean it? Are they evil? Well, they do evil. And I would argue also that evil is done because of societies, entire societies. If a person has committed a heinous crime in society, a common criminal, as they would say, if somebody's done something evil, it's because the society itself is not properly ethical. It's not an ethical society. It's not a society that encourages wisdom and introspect and critical thinking, objective thinking about, self-objective and self-critical thinking. We don't have wisdom today as something being promoted in most societies. This is dangerous. Homo sapiens barely exists. I mean, we really are mostly Homo ignoramus still. And to achieve Homo sapiens, we would need more philosophers like myself. So, and now let's get to language. Because it's very clear, part of these narrow-minded, short-term, and shallow, myopic views of the world are based on ideas that are based on the inability to understand basic definitions, basic words. So if you ask XYZ person who is otherwise a extreme right-winger, a nationalist, whatever, extremist, what they think democracy means, some of them will say, well, democracy means we win the elections with the majority, and the majority rules, and whatever the representative of that majority wants is what the people wanted, regardless of the opposition. That's not democracy. You can't have real democracy that is not sustained. And sustained democracy, real democracy, requires a basic constitution that guarantees the basic minimum so that the people who are not in power at the time still have the real possibility of presenting their ideas, their alternatives in the next round of elections. And those elections have to be relatively, soon each time. They can't be, you can't have a government going on for 20 years because that's almost a whole generation. So you need elections. Most countries do it every 4 years or 2 years, whatever. Some countries like Italy have had elections almost every year. The thing is, we need democracy. But democracy is not just the majority rules. It's the majority rules, but within a certain limitation, within the requirements to protect the rights of those in the opposition. Obviously, a real democracy should not tolerate any organization, political organization, that is a fascist organization, whose agenda is to destroy the very democracy that they are participating in. That's not democracy. That is not freedom of expression and freedom of speech in a public space, in a government place. In a private home, on a private property, on a farm, if fascists want to get together in a private place and promote their ideas, the common space, to promote ideas and to basically threaten people and say that if we come in power, we will do this and this and this and this, and it means basically you will destroy that very same democracy that allows you to say that. That's not democracy. Democracy should be a competition between, one good versus another good, relatively speaking. One democratic political party versus another democratic political party. Okay? That's the basic truth. So democracy is not understood by most people, and that's a word that is abused. Another word that's abused is fascism. Fascism is basically the opposite of democracy. Now, you could go to the classical definition, I mentioned that last time, and you could talk about fascism according to Mussolini, which was really fascism, and it also, but there's many forms of fascism. There's plutocracy, fascism of the elite wealthy. There's fascism of religious leaders and religion, which is theocracy, where one single religion in that country is absolutely in charge and rules and can murder anybody in the name of that religion, and the leader of that religious organization that runs that country. So that's a theocracy. That is a fascism. I've mentioned plutocracy, theocracy. Then there's a kakistocracy, when the least qualified people, because they have connections, get into power and control power by corruption. And you have plutocracy, fascism of people who just steal themselves and steal into power and then steal the public's wealth. And that's connected to plutocracy, of course, and often theocracy. Fascists often mix these things. Theocracy and plutocracy sort of go hand in hand to some extent. And this is what we have now. We've got fascists who claim that they are democratic, therefore democracy, therefore democratic republic. No. They're fascist. Why? Because they believe that the opposition is the cause of the troubles, and then they try to thwart the ability of the opposition to partake in the democratic process by doing things that are clearly illegal. And this is going on all over the world, not just in one giant country, but elsewhere. And they help each other. Fascists around the world, they help each other. So let's get back to another word that we often abuse, and that is the word love. People think love, most people have a narrow definition of love. They think, I love my family, I love my wife, I love my children, they are everything to me. Well, if you really love your wife and your family, your children, or whoever you love, you must also love the people they love, and then those people who they love, who love those people, and it extends what eventually it extends to the whole world. You must love humanity, not the negative aspects, not the people who do evil things. People do evil things, but their souls are lost inside their brain and the mind world. They're lost, they're confused, and they don't see that they are doing wrong. They don't see they're doing evil. People don't do evil because they really mean it. They think they mean it, but they think that what they're doing is actually not evil and that they're fighting evil. But you know, there's just a limit to what is real self-defense. It is not self-defense to preemptively strike unless there's really no option because the threat is so significant. But then we're getting into modern technology and all the dangers of modern weaponry and how that affects our decisions. And so this has been Ethics, etc. today, and I could go on with all kinds of words. There always are solutions if you want to be ethical, but you got to be wise. And I could go on and on and on. So this has been Ethics, etc. I hope that, though I spoke very fast, because I feel that pressure to put all these ideas into a compact show, please, if you have any questions or you want to debate with me and you want to say I'm wrong, let me know. Thank you. This has been Ethics, etc. This is Jean-Pierre Defegno, the philosopher of ethics, and someone who has some incredible ideas. Oh, and one other thing. This is piggybacking with another kind of show I'm going to be doing with this, and that is this future show. There's this future scene. I call it future scene, and there's where I will discuss my views on not what's going on now and in the past in terms of ethics, but what is likely to happen next in terms of trends, future trends. I have a sensitivity about the future, and I can foresee certain likelihood of certain things happening, patterns, trends in technology and science and in society, politics, etc., international relations, geopolitical reality. So that will be piggybacking on this show. Please take a look at it, future scene. Thank you once again.